proposals made in these amendments?
My Lords, it's a privilege to speak after the noble Baroness with her depth of knowledge of this subject, but also to speak after my noble friend Lord Howard of Rising, who did me a number of favours. First of all, he saved me any obligation to explain what marriage value is, and secondly, he made a moderate and temperate case for his amendment when my argument might be expressed somewhat less moderately and well-temperedly, because I feel a real sense of outrage about what is being proposed here. Marriage value, as my noble friend has explained, is a real financial asset. His Majesty's government says that they're abolishing it. They're not abolishing it. What they are effectively doing is transferring, at the stroke of a pen, value from the freeholder to the leaseholder without any compensation. It is simply expropriation. My amendment, which is a probing amendment, of course, I wouldn't expect this to be part of the bill, obliges the Secretary of State to pay compensation to those who have lost out as a result of this. Of course, what I really want is for the government to scrap the provision itself rather than for compensation actually to be paid, and I wouldn't expect that this would be a practical policy. So, as I say, it's a probing amendment to raise the question about expropriation without compensation. There are three broad points I want to make about it. There are genuine evils in the leasehold system. I made clear at second reading that there were things that I support in this bill. So, for example, it was scandalous that in recent years some house builders sold leasehold houses with escalating ground rents, rapidly escalating ground rents, which they then securitized in order to increase their capital receipts. And, of course, it is pretty scandalous the way many freeholders are implementing their obligations in relation to the cladding crisis. People are genuinely suffering as a result of this. But how many of these evils are actually being addressed by removing marriage value from the calculation of the enfranchisement premium or the premium paid for extending a lease? This is completely ungermane to the main evils that this bill has been advanced as addressing. Now, expropriation of this character implies some sort of wrongdoing on the part of the person whose assets are being expropriated. It requires a high test. You've noticed that even in the case of the friends of Putin, we have been sensitive and careful about expropriation. We have frozen assets, but when it comes to saying, shall we now expropriate them and give them to Ukraine or do whatever useful stuff we might do with that money, you'll find that, of course, we all draw back from it because of the legal consequences. But here we're perfectly happy to expropriate assets and hand them around the market without any consideration at all, and with very few people actually rising to protest about it, even in your lordship's house. The Secretary of State, I believe, has said that he sees this as an act of justice. But what is the justice involved in transferring wealth from a group of people who include, as my noble friend has said, charities and indeed pension funds, and we shall come shortly to amendments in the name of the Right Reverend Prelate, the Bishop of Manchester, which deals specifically with charities, which I put my name to, but from charities and pension funds to leaseholders who in many cases would be frightfully rich. I live in Kensington, and as I declared, if I need to declare it, in my second reading speech, I live in a flat on a long leasehold. But there are many people around Kensington, I'm sure, many people with very expensive properties at the moment who are absolutely salivating at the prospect of this going through. This is not helping, this is not going to help substantially sort of the poor and middle classes. This is going to transfer huge amounts of wealth to people with long lease, and the more valuable the flat is, the bigger the benefit they're going to get from it. So where is the justice in all of this? I simply don't understand how that that can be made. My second point relates to the European Convention on Human Rights, in which I don't claim to be an expert. I have a suspicion that my noble friend, when she rises to answer, will say that the European Convention on Human Rights, in respect of Article 1 of the first protocol, to which the noble Baroness Lady Deach has referred with such learning, that there have been similar cases in the past taken to the court, and the landowners, the freeholders, have lost, and therefore the government is absolutely certain that this is something that will pass that test. I am, of course, wholly unqualified to comment on the legal merits of the case in either way, but I will simply say this. Even if it did pass that test, is this something that in England, because it's England principally we're talking about, that in England, with its tradition of respect for private property, with its tradition of not actually implementing retrospective law or seizure of assets without very good reason, even if it did pass that test, should it pass the test as far as the rights, the inherited, the older rights that we have in this country are concerned? And I would suggest that it does not. And my final point is really, I mean, even the Law Society, which, you know, the lefty lawyers, as they're often referred to, and not a phrase I'd use, that I hope Hansard will put that very much in quotation marks, but even the Law Society is concerned about the damage that this will do to the reputation of English law. My final point relates, is really addressed to my fellows on these benches who take the Conservative whip, which is really, is this what we came in to this House to do? We are here, and my noble friends on the front bench are here to expropriate property without compensation, without justice, without an argument, without there being a serious wrongdoing on the part of the person whose assets are seized. Is this what we came in to do? I don't think it is. This is something that the government needs to take away and rethink very seriously, in my view, because it is wrong, it smells, it is something we should have nothing to do